Spooky. What up, Wizards? It's Dev and Ziggy from Mtg. He's a magic man. And you know what? These Forgotten Realms spoilers, I don't know if you know, they start June 29th. And as I record this, it's June 18th, so we got like a week and a half before we start seeing cards from this silly, magnificent thing, I'm sure. So I should probably go ahead and start telling you how I feel about what's even going to be in the thing in the first place. We have seen a few cards from the set, enough to know that there's going to be iconic characters from D&D lore and iconic weapons and items and whatnot. But aside from that, we really don't know how the set works on a fundamental level. We don't know the mechanics involved here, or really beyond some legendary creatures we can probably expect. We really don't know what else to expect from the set at all. And I kind of got to hand it to Wizards just a little bit here, because it's kind of uncommon to know so little about such a high-profile release, like right before it comes out. Normally we know a little bit more by now, is all I'm saying. So I guess props for that. So a lot of people are super psyched about a D&D crossover, and I can't blame them. You'd think there'd be some more information, but in lieu of any actual spoilers, because I know you're hungry for those, don't worry, it won't be long, or any real news about the set of any kind, why don't we just fill that 11 days in between now and spoiler season by talking about 5 things I expect from this set. Here's my 5 predictions for Forgotten Realms. Because I'm a content creator. People care what I say about stuff for some reason. I don't know how I got this platform either, but I guess let's talk about it. We'll start with number 5. We know there are going to be dragons, right? We've already seen Tiamat's going to be in the set. Can't wait to play with some dragon tribal. It's going to be cool. But the other half of that equation is dungeons. So what up, dungeons? Much like magnets, how do those work? We don't know. At this point in time, at least. The MTG wiki for the Forgotten Realms set claims to have some information about dungeons, but I haven't seen anything officially said through Wizards of the Coast yet about any dungeon mechanic and how that's going to work in the set. So what I'd rather see, or if you are going to do a dungeon mechanic, I'd like to see somehow lands incorporated into that somehow. I want the dungeons to be lands, is what I'm getting at here. And like we've already seen some iconic characters represented and some iconic weapons represented on some of the previews we've gotten so far, I'd like to see some iconic locations or campaigns represented on some of these dungeons. And they don't even have to like produce colors. I mean, I guess they could if you wanted to, but you know, I like the idea of having dungeons that have like a set number of conditions you have to meet before you can unlock their full potential, right? You make it through the dungeon and you get some sort of reward for having done that. And all the while it taps for colorless or something like that. Or maybe it comes into play tapped and taps for 2 or 3 even different colors of mana. But, you know, or maybe it taps for 1 color of mana, and after you fulfill a certain number of conditions, you beat the dungeon or whatever, then it taps for the other color of mana. See, there's all kinds of ways you could explore this design space. And those are just 2 or 3 ways, like off the top of my head. I can't imagine that Wizards didn't think of this during design. Like maybe the idea got scrapped at some point, but I would imagine that somebody on the design team was like, "Hey, maybe dungeons should be lands. Let's figure that out." So I'm not absolutely sure it's going to happen, but I'd bet $5 on it. Now on to another prediction that I'm pretty sure is like easy to make. You know, I think that the dungeons or lands thing is like I think that's safe. Much like I think this one's safe. Number 4 is that I think that the party mechanic, elves, dwarves, all of these get a boost when this set comes out. Also dragons. If I hadn't brought up Dragon Tribal already, I would have done it just then. I guess I just have, so YouTube videos. But yeah, just a bunch of different tribal things, including the party mechanic. I think you're going to get like the boost that they deserve when this set comes out, right? Elves is on the cusp. It's really not too bad. Actually, Dwarves isn't a terrible deck either. And I'm not talking about the 7 Dwarves deck. Like, if you just build Dwarves Tribal without 7 Dwarves, it's actually not too bad. Winota at the top end. It's a fine deck, but obviously these are all creature types that exist within the D&D universe. And I'm fairly certain they'll be heavily represented in some way or another in this set. If we don't get some good elves especially, I'll be a little upset. And if we don't get some good, like, wizards for the party mechanic, I will be surprised, to say the least. I mean, party is the kind of mechanic, and just tribal aggro decks in general are the kind of decks that get much better in a full standard, and that's kind of what party especially has been waiting on this whole time, is to have a standard full of sets that can support all the different creature types that you need to come together to make party actually work. So I'm not sure that party especially, or even elves or dwarves or anything, are going to be top tier decks when it's all said and done. The smoke settles and the dust clears, but I do think they at least get a boost and become a little bit easier to play, if nothing else. But again, I think that's an easy prediction to make. It's like, oh, there's going to be creature types in this set. Yeah, of course. Come on, man. We clicked on this video for the juicy stuff. So here's one that I'm a little less sure of, to say the least. But at the same time, I think if they don't incorporate this mechanic somehow, that they have lost a chance. So number 3, I'm just going to call roll a d20. I don't know I don't know how they incorporate it into gameplay, and there's a whole bunch of different ways. It might just be on like one card that you roll a d20. You call it like saving throw or critical chance or something like that. Saving throw actually has a lot of different like mechanical and design implications. I'm making the card in my head right now, but in any case, just one card could do this, or it could be a mechanic to roll a d20. I mean, if it is a whole mechanic and multiple cards have you rolling a d20 or even a d6 or something like that. Although I think d20 is probably the better thing you want to go with here. But anyway, if multiple cards have this mechanic, I would much rather it be like a limited mechanic, right? But I think it'd be easy enough to do this. I mean, on Arena, you just roll a digital d20. How hard is that? And then, although apparently randomization is tough for Arena. And then obviously, had to get that jab in there, I'm sorry. And then obviously, like every Magic player in the world has like 400 or so d20s in their house from attending pre-releases and just like playing Magic. You play Magic, you have a billion of these. So, I think that it would be easy enough and give people something to do with their giant stash of d20s. If somehow this mechanic was incorporated into the set somehow, even if it's just on, a roll of 1 through 5, do this. On a roll of 6 through 10, do that. On a roll of 11 through 15, so forth and so on. And you only really had like 4 modes on the card, just depending on what you rolled. Obviously, this like super high degree of randomization would probably not be great for competitive Magic, right? But again, as like a limited mechanic, I would love to see somehow this incorporated into this set. Now, number 2, as I think we really are, there's like a hierarchy here. As we go down, this is stuff that's like less and less likely to happen, I think. But number 2, I would still really like to happen, and we've been wanting this mechanic, like I feel like as a community, we've been wanting this mechanic to return for a really long time. And what better set than the Dungeons and Dragons set to reinstate Level Up as a mechanic? And there's so much unexplored design space with Level Up. I feel like we haven't gotten too many of these cards yet, and it's such a beloved mechanic, Like, if anything, Ascendant Spirit, the blue snow 1-drop in Standard right now is like the closest thing we have to leveling up, right? But I do hope, please, that we get at least a few of these cards, if it's not a major mechanic, that we at least get a callback to this mechanic somehow or another, because, again, everyone seems to like it, and I'm sure there's someone in the comment section who doesn't really care for Level Up, but I think it's such a cool mechanic, and it would be really sweet if we could see it reintroduced in the set, because it just, come on, man, it makes a lot of sense. But number 1, somehow, this is a quick video, but number 1 is kind of nebulous, right? So I had to make it number 1 because I don't know that they're going to actually do this as much as I want them to, I guess. But I guess we'll call number 1, callbacks to D&D are also callbacks to old school Magic. Now, we've seen this. What the phenomenon I'm describing here is kind of present on the card Flumph. We saw this preview the other day. I haven't talked about it on camera yet. I talked about it on stream. I haven't talked about it on the channel yet. In case you haven't seen this, this is a somewhat iconic D&D monster. But it's also a callback to like Wall of Omens and Wall of Blossoms. And I think they need to do more of that, right? Like, we've seen a few cards so far that, they're iconic D&D characters, but they don't necessarily call back to any specific Magic cards or anything. At least nothing that's obvious at first reading, right? But Flumph, you immediately know, if you're an old school Magic player at least, like, oh, this is kind of like a Wall of Omens, a Wall of Blossoms. It's like one of those things. And I want more of that. Again, kind of a nebulous request, but I think that a lot of these like iconic D&D monsters need to somehow call back and, establish that connection between D&D and Magic the Gathering, even all the way back in like 1993, 1995. Like, in that era, it used to be like a thing that D&D players did between campaigns, between rounds, and, before and after they're done with the campaign for the night. So Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering have a rich and very connected history together. So I'd like, if we were going to call back to, iconic old school D&D characters like Beholders and Mind Flayers, that they would also in some way evoke old school Magic cards. Like, what if a Mind Flayer was effectively a Hypnotic Spectre? And that would make a lot of sense too, wouldn't it? So that would be cool. Just a weird request, I know. Again, I hate to use this word 3 times in the same video, but nebulous. It's really hard to grasp this one and do it right. But again, it would be just really sweet to me and endearing in terms of like how I look at this set. If a lot of the cards that call back to like super iconic D&D characters, locations, items, weapons, and all that, were also cards that call back to iconic Magic cards. But, you know, that's me as a Magic player looking at a D&D set. I've played a few campaigns in my life, and I've rolled up a whole bunch of characters as well. But I'm not as much of a D&D player by any stretch as I am a Magic player. So maybe it's just my selfish frame of mind, thinking like, oh, I know the D&D players finally get a set of their own to play Magic with. But as a Magic player, I want it to be Magic cards. maybe I'm just being a jerk in that situation. But I do think it'd be a cool thing to do. And it's not like a whole bunch of D&D players wouldn't know what cards we're referencing, because again, there's so much crossover already between these two audiences that I'm really surprised that it took this long to get a crossover set, to be 100% honest. But those are my predictions so far, at least. Maybe I'll have a couple more in the next week and a half for Forgotten Realms. But go down there in the comments section and let me know what your predictions for the set are, because I think that Dungeons and Dragons has such like a rich history and so many connections to Magic too, that like there could be any number of predictions for what we may or may not expect in this set. And I think that a lot of people are going to be, you know, happy with it, and then some people are going to be upset because like their one favorite thing from D&D wasn't included. We already got Bag of Holding a couple of sets ago. I wonder if we get the reprint in this one. But anyway, that's all I get for this one. Just let me know how you felt about it, how likely some of these things are, how you felt about the predictions, like roll a d20. Is that something you'd like to do in a game of Magic? Because I think I would. But anyway, aside from that, do all the YouTube stuff and stick with the channel, because there's a lot more content in just the Strixhaven Standard season to cover before we're done. But obviously, spoilers are starting soon, so subscribe, hit the bell for the notifications if you haven't done it yet, and that way you'll get all the preview content when it comes out, and that I assume you want to see. I am more hyped for this set than I've been for any set in like quite some time, like since like Dominaria, and I'm not even like the Dungeons and Dragons player. I played it. All of my friends like in my life basically have played Dungeons and Dragons. So, you know, it's a set that I'm super hyped for, because I think that it's got like, I don't know, it's just something that, again, I'm surprised hasn't happened yet. It seems like it's a long time coming, so I hope it shakes up Standard and all that. But even if it doesn't, I think there's going to be a lot of cool stuff in this set we can get hype about as a community. But in any case, do all the other YouTube stuff. Like I said, like, subscribe, bell, notifications, blah, blah. Watch me play Magic on twitch.tv/spmtgdev and laugh at the misplays if you want to. I'm just having fun. Mostly I'm just paying attention to chat and having fun with them, because we have a great time on stream. Hey, what's up, Strictly Squad? Good to see you. Aside from that, I will be streaming again soon, and you can check out the Patreon if you want to. $1 a month is all it takes to vote on content, and once we get to Forgotten Realms Standard, probably going to want to vote on what you want to see first and like all throughout the season. But that's my pitch. I think I'm done. Aside from that, I guess I'll catch you cats later. I'm Dev from the Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.